When her sister became attracted to me, my wife, who had desired a LAT marriage, regretted it. This is an absurd tale. When her sister became interested in me, my wife, who had desired a LAT marriage, regretted it. I, Daniel, a 36-year-old man, must talk about this completely crazy thing that has been happening in my life lately. I've been married to Amelia, a 33-year-old woman, for nearly 8 years. We've been together for 10 years and have 2 wonderful girls, ages 5 and 7. To be honest, I felt that everything was going quite well. Sure, we were no longer going through the honeymoon phase, but who does after 8 years and 2 children? We had our typical marital activities. We would occasionally quarrel over trivial things like her overspending on Amazon or me leaving my work boots in the living room, but nothing significant. Amelia has this corporate job that she seems to enjoy while I work in construction management. I started out as an ordinary laborer, worked my way up, and made a respectable living. 3 years ago, we purchased a home. Children are succeeding academically. We essentially lived the typical American dream last year, even getting a dog. In retrospect, though, I should have seen a few things. Amelia had suddenly changed. She was lighter, happier, and more focused on her work. She used to simply complain about her work. Like everyone else, they grumbled about boring meetings, obnoxious coworkers, and other things. However, she recently brought up work as if it were thrilling. Then there was her boss, Marcus. He was initially merely a name that occasionally appeared in her stories. During today's meeting, Marcus had the most hilarious notion, or his suggestion really salvaged the project, etc. Then it began to move. She started making casual references to him in little ways that didn't seem significant at the time but now stand out like neon lights, such as when we were discussing management approaches. "You ought to hear Marcus's perspective on leadership," she added. "In fact, it's quite motivating." Or when she instantly left when I made a joke about corporate jargon. According to Marcus, when it comes to fostering team cohesion, those words do matter. Yes, that sounded exactly like what she thought. "Dude, it sounds like Marcus is your work husband, just playing around." I recall remarking casually. After a moment of inaction, she had to giggle and said, "Oh, stop. He is simply an excellent mentor." All right. Strange, but I dismissed it. Amelia entered the room as I was in the middle of watching a YouTube video about repairing the garage door. She had that expression when she finally plucked up the courage to say something she had been holding back for a long time. "Everything. All right. Children. Excellent. Your parents." Half distracted, I assumed it was just a random update when I inquired. Yes. Everyone is doing well." She shifted her weight as she spoke, as if standing there was uncomfortable for her. "I only need to discuss something that caught my attention with you." I Danieled at her as I halted the film. "All right, what is going on?" She let out a breath. "I believe we ought to attempt living separate from one another." "What are you living? You're still married, but you live in different places and share custody." "It's a human behavior." I waited for her to laugh, or say she was kidding as I just looked at her. She didn't. I felt maybe the cleaning chemicals I was using earlier were causing some strange hallucinations, so I had to suspend my camera and everything. To put everything in perspective, the morning appeared to be going well. Together, we had breakfast. I assisted in getting the children ready for school. No arguments, no tension, just a typical farewell kiss and routine. Thus, this was totally unexpected. I questioned her further about the LAT issue and how she found out about it. It turns out that she has been spending a lot of time with Hannah, a friend from her yoga class. Hannah is a self-described authority on contemporary relationships who has gone through 4 divorces. Yes, you read correctly. And for some reason, she believes this qualifies her to offer marriage counseling. That would make her an authority on how to fail at marriage, wouldn't it? But I made an effort to remain composed. To be honest, I'm proud of myself for it. I inhaled deeply, set my phone aside, and made an effort to discuss this with a real adult. I questioned her about what caused this. Her reaction was crazy, regardless of whether I had done something incorrectly or whether there were issues I was unaware of. I was attempting to be that responsible husband who talks and all that. She simply sat there as if she were discussing switching our internet service provider or whatever. She said that she needed time and space to grow personally and began using a lot of buzzwords that, to be honest, sounded like they were taken directly from a self-help book that Hannah had likely given her. The part that really got me was when she continued to talk about how LAT relationships are the way of the future and how all these European couples are doing it because apparently what works in Sweden should definitely work in suburban Ohio. She even had the audacity to say that if it doesn't work out, we could always move back to living together. Like this was just a trial run of a new Netflix show that we could cancel if we didn't like it, not our actual marriage and family. As she was talking, I kept thinking about our children, wondering how you explain to a 7-year-old that mommy and daddy are still married but no longer want to live together. My mind would not stop talking. This was not the kind of thing Amelia had ever entertained. She constantly shut it down, saying it was too much and not for her, even when the topic of open marriage was brought up in conversation, typically as a joke. When couples tried those contemporary arrangements, she used to roll her eyes. What changed, then? Did I fail to give her what she desired? Had I overlooked something? Though I'm sure she was content, I continued going over our previous few months together in an attempt to pinpoint the exact moment when things changed. Lately, she had been lighter and more energetic. And if I were to say when it began, it was sometime around the time she approached Marcus. Felt like I was living with a different Amelia ever since. After Amelia revealed the whole LAT bomb to me, I did what any sane person would do and, while eating the kids' leftover Halloween candy, I spent half the night researching all I could about LAT relationships. That I'll tell you what caught my attention. This LAT thing isn't entirely insane, it turns out. The problem is that some people manage to make it work. Couples with 2 primary school-age children living in the same suburb are typically elderly couples with grown children or people who work in other cities. Red flag number 427. Am I correct? However, I choose to play by myself. That adage about giving someone enough rope, you know. Yes, I was thinking the same thing. When I sat down with Amelia the following morning, I said, "Okay, let's talk about how this would actually work." The look on her face as I began discussing formal custody arrangements was amusing. I was prepared to take notes as if this were some sort of business meeting with my laptop out and Google open. I was fairly certain that she assumed this would be more of a casual setting where you do your thing and I do mine. Therefore, we must devise a suitable custody schedule. I'm thinking of taking a week off, or maybe 2 or 3, I added. Her expression was one of utter surprise, and we will need to establish explicit guidelines for birthdays and holidays. It might be wise to hire attorneys to formalize the situation. I went on, to avoid any misunderstandings later. She gave lawyers a telling reaction. We could just work it out as we go along, I thought. I then revealed that my cousin Evelyn practices family law. When I told you all that Evelyn had really offered to represent me for free, you should have seen Amelia's expression. Random chatter during last year's Christmas party, in case I ever needed it. Thank you, Evelyn, who is intoxicated. Without hesitation, Amelia began about this lawyer she knows through Hannah. It seems that he was in charge of Hannah's divorces. All 4 of them, yes. Well, that's a big surprise, but this is where things start to get good. I began to inquire about our plan in great detail. The second flat is being paid for by whom? How will the bills be divided? What about the children's transportation to school? On what days does the dog go to whom? How do we respond to medical crises? How about conferences between parents and teachers? Who is in charge of extracurricular activities? She appeared increasingly uneasy with each question. I'm fairly certain that Hannah didn't tell her this would happen. The best part was that I took out the spreadsheet I created at 3 in the morning, which detailed the exact costs of everything: rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, and everything else that would arise from running 2 households rather than 1. It even included a column for dating expenses because, well, if we're living apart, we might as well be realistic about everything, right? As soon as she Emily that this was not going to be a fun, independent lady experience, I could physically see it. Hannah most likely forced her to watch, just like in those films. This was going to be real life, complete with obligations and repercussions. I then posed the most important query. Which area are you considering relocating to? Then, her hesitation before responding. Yes, that caused me to have a lot of concerns. In an attempt to regain her composure, she mentioned that she had been considering flats in Oak Valley, which is, for those who are unfamiliar with the area, a posh complex on the opposite side of town that is far more costly than the amount we had planned for in my spreadsheet. At that point, I told her we would resume our preparations at a later time. I'm not the world's sharpest guy, but something didn't feel right. Why that particular location? It's about a half-hour's drive from the child's school, has no playground, and most of the apartments are one-bedroom. So it's not exactly the best option for someone who plans to host 2 children on a regular basis. So began to dig, as any neurotic spouse would. It turns out that Dave, one of my coworkers, texted him to ask if he could obtain some information because his sister works at the leasing office in Oak Valley. Yes, I am aware that's a little dubious, but it's desperate times, isn't it? Who do you think resides in Oak Valley? Mr. O, the new regional manager Amelia has mentioned hundreds of times in the last few months. Marcus, someone from her office, is simply incredibly passionate about corporate synergy, and I initially assumed she was merely envious of him living in that area and wanted to give it a try, but this is what confused me. Amelia went really odd when I mentioned setting up the kids' room at her new apartment. She said things like, "Maybe we should wait until I'm settled in and the girls might be confused at first, before dropping this gym. Perhaps they should simply spend the majority of their time with you until everything is resolved." Correct, because choosing to spend less time with your children is a sign of a good mother. Therefore, you can live in a one-bedroom apartment close to your boss, who is merely a coworker. However, I refrained from confronting her about Marcus at first. First, I wanted to get additional information. I therefore contacted Emily, her sister. Since Emily's divorce last year, she has been a touch flirtatious, nothing extravagant but enough to draw attention, and we have always gotten along, perhaps a bit too well if I'm being honest. I laughed it off and never encouraged it because, well, marriage, even though she once told me outright that if my sister hadn't had you first. Emily was taken aback by the entire LAT situation, but she soon began to piece everything together. Amelia had apparently been questioning her about all these hypothetical things lately. After a breakup, how long should you wait before dating again? Is dating someone you work with strange? How do you tell the kids you're dating someone new? That's my personal favorite question. Then she told me that, presumably thinking she was being discreet, Amelia had been particularly inquiring about Marcus's schedule, the floor he lived on, whether he had a girlfriend, and pretty much anything but his blood type and social security number. After all these years together, I wanted to vomit. She then presents me with a fashionable new word, as if it were a damn life hack. As if our union were only a test she had read about in a self-help book. I pretended to mend things in the garage all night long. In actuality, my jaw was clenched so tightly that my teeth hurt, my hand was aching, and I was bashing the living daylights out of my punching bag. Every time I imagined her sitting me down in that manner, so relaxed, so determined, I became enraged. Later, I learned that Amelia spent 2 hours inside talking to Hannah on the phone, likely seeking more professional advice on how to dissolve a marriage quickly, while I was out there trying to prevent myself from losing. I had to play this on my own terms, even though I knew that everything we had done together had already broken the trust. The following morning, I began my own apartment search, although I first looked at properties close to Emily's house, which is completely opposite of Oak Valley. I casually mentioned this to Amelia. I then began to look for apartments. Amelia hardly looked up from her coffee as I said this while reading through my phone. Oh, I see. Where? Emily was drawn to a few locations close to her area. She jerked her head up. Hold on, what? It's unfair to the children. It will be difficult for them if we live too far away. I put down my cup and simply gazed at her. Oh, we're considering what's equitable for the children now. She blinked, as if she hadn't anticipated that I would reprimand this woman's rudeness. I promise. She sent out this irritated sigh after opening and closing her mouth. I did not intend that. You're intentionally being challenging. I shook my head, laughed a little, and sat back in my chair. Amelia, oh no, I'm having a great time. She squinted. What is the intended meaning of that? I simply brushed past her and left without saying anything. I thought I couldn't be more angry, but Amelia went and showed me that I wasn't. I heard her on the phone that night. I heard her talking too casually about something that made my fury boil, and I wasn't even attempting to listen in. I was simply passing the bedroom. Yes, I believe it will benefit us. It gives me a time to regroup and concentrate on myself, she said. And to be honest, I believe Daniel will change his mind once he Emily's how much simpler things are this way, no stress, less fighting. In fact, he may come to prefer it. I prefer it, excuse me. Then she laughed, really laughed, as if this whole thing were a small, odd change in lifestyle rather than a total breakdown of our family's dynamic. For a moment, I stood there with my fist clenched, simply taking in the idea that she truly believed I would simply roll over and accept this, as if I were some naive, passive fool she could manipulate into a position that would only serve her interests. After that, I made the decision to drop my own little bomb, and boy, did it turn out better than I had anticipated. We were discussing more specifics of living apart from one another while seated in the kitchen. Amelia was boasting about how grown-up we were in every way. I then mentioned the Florida trip in passing. To put things in perspective, Amelia has had an unhealthy preoccupation with visiting Florida for a very long time. She has an entire Pinterest board devoted to Florida beaches, follows all these vacation accounts on Instagram and so on, but we never visited since something always came up. Children couldn't get time off work since they were too young. The finances were tight. It's like that. As I'm sipping my coffee, I remark nonchalantly, "Oh, by the way, I need your opinion on something. Should I simply alter the names or try to get a refund for the Florida tickets?" I'm very sure she earned herself whiplash based on the way her head snapped up. "What Florida tickets?" Trying and failing to sound casual, she asked. At that point, I informed her of the surprise 7-day beachside hotel vacation I had planned for our impending anniversary, including arrangements for the parents to watch the children. The LAT situation is unknown to them at this time. That is just another potential nightmare. Her expression was priceless. Confusion follows excitement. Then, like a child who has just learned they are going to Disney World but still remembers they are grounded, there is this strange mixture of anxiety and hope. "You organized our trip to Florida?" she almost muttered. I said, "Well, I planned it for us when we were still in us, but I thought you might want to take someone else instead because you want to do this LAT thing. It would be unfortunate to waste the non-refundable tickets that have been paid for." She began to backpedal quickly. I feared that she could begin to moonwalk. "Perhaps we ought just hold off on the LAT issue. We could reconnect on this vacation," she suggests. I dropped the second bomb at that point. "Actually, I've already altered your ticket to be transferable by calling the travel agency. You are free to take anybody you like." A trip to the beach can be enjoyable for Marcus. Her face lost its color and became ghostly white. She began to stutter that Marcus was merely a coworker and questioned why I would even bring up the subject. I simply shrugged and said, "Well, since you're planning to move into his apartment building, I figured you guys must be close." Then, as if I hadn't just ruined our entire conversation, she followed me around the kitchen and tried to correct me, telling me that Marcus living there was a coincidence and that Oak Valley was a nice complex. Then she gave me this blow. "How are you even aware that Marcus resides there? Have you been keeping an eye on me lately? It's amusing that you are more worried about how I know where Marcus lives than about your intention to move close to him without telling me," I replied, glancing at her. She remained silent, but I could tell she was about to cry since her eyes were misting. All I could do was stand there in contempt before she bounded off. After everything regarding the Florida tickets, I hoped Amelia would tell the truth. "You think I'm a fool?" Rather, she entered a state of complete damage control, but not the kind where things are truly fixed. It's more akin to trying to deceive everyone into believing you're the victim. Because she naturally did, she ran to Hannah first. During their 3-hour phone conversation, I could hear Amelia sobbing through the walls about how I was using check notes to manipulate her emotionally and reveal her plan to leave her children behind in order to live close to her boss. These two guys' mental gymnastics should definitely get them an Olympic medal, I promise. This is where things become fascinating, though. Recall that my coworker Dave has a sister who works in Oak Valley. It turns out that Marcus has also been involved in some dubious activities. According to office rumors, Marcus has been boasting to his coworkers about this attractive accounting mom who is completely smitten with him. Guess who works in accounting? The best part, though, is that Marcus has a serious girlfriend who takes their ring selection very seriously. Dave's sister, who handled their rental renewal last month, informed me that she is unaware of any of this. They share a home in Oak Valley. I'm currently attempting to decide what to do with this informational bomb. My smarter side, which sounds strangely like Cousin Evelyn, tells me to keep gathering proof and maintain my composure. There is a part of me that wants to blow everything up. Tell Marcus's girlfriend. Tell HR. Tell everyone. Speaking of my cousin Evelyn, my lawyer, she performed admirably. I'm not sure how she managed to obtain a copy of Amelia's Oak Valley rental application by pulling some sort of legal strings. On the application, she indicated that she was single, not married or separated, and she listed Marcus as her emergency contact rather than, say, her husband or the father of her child. Amelia is still attempting to play both sides in the meantime. She's working on our marriage 1 minute, and then she's texting Marcus the next. Yes, I watched her iPad's notifications appear. She ought to update her password since the day of our anniversary. It's similar to witnessing someone who lacks hand-eye coordination attempt to juggle. And then there's the Emily case. She has been texting me more frequently to see how I'm doing since the turmoil around the Florida tickets. Just offering support, nothing out of the ordinary. But while I was preparing dinner, Amelia noticed one of her texts appear on my phone. I hope you're persevering that if you need to talk and lose your mind, let me know. This is how the conversation unfolded. Why is my sister texting you, Amelia? Me? Because she genuinely cares about her family? Unlike other people, she's always been attracted to you, Amelia. You two must be enjoying this. Me? It's interesting that your concerns about Marcus's girlfriend learning about your apartment plans are less important to you than your sister texting me. Marcus isn't involved in this. Amelia, what girlfriend, too? She went totally crazy, akin to complete breakdown mode. Muttering that this wasn't supposed to happen this way, she began to pace the kitchen while rubbing her hands through her hair. Then she simply collapsed, literally dropped to the floor against the kitchen cupboard, and began to cry. You'll abandon me for Emily, won't you? Between sobbing, she choked out, you're moving close to her for that reason. This whole incident was probably arranged by you two. I remained motionless for a minute, recollecting how good things were before she damaged them. It's funny, you know. You're sitting there wailing about me possibly leaving you for your sister, which isn't happening, by the way, while you're actually going to move into your boss's apartment complex. The mental gymnastics here are Olympic level, I eventually remarked, leaning against the counter. She had mascara streaming down her face as she gazed up at me. It wasn't like that. I wasn't. I simply felt as though life was slipping away from me, and Marcus helped me to feel that way. Just let me stop you there. I interrupted her because I could actually lose it if she continued to say that her boss made her feel special while I was busy supporting our family and raising our children. That triggered another bout of crying. I didn't mean to offend you. Or the girls, she whispered. The girls, oh God. What did I do? You did intend to harm us, Amelia, and that's the problem. Even if you weren't aware of it, you knew that every decision you made, the LAT recommendation, the apartment close to Marcus, designating him as your emergency contact, and declaring yourself unmarried would negatively impact your family. She simply sat there sobbing, and to be honest, it didn't cheer me up that I felt as though it would only make me feel sorry for our children. I was heartbroken for what we had and that she had wasted it all on a fantasy that would never come true. Hannah claimed that this was typical, but she then says something that truly made me laugh aloud. All marriages experience this, she added, and LAT would keep our union intact. Do you mean that Hannah, the woman who's gone through 4 divorces? Yes, it's a terrific place to get marriage counsel. I'm incredibly foolish. She spoke to herself in hushed tones more often than to me. No, you are not a moron. You are self-centered, I groaned. There is a distinction. Then she raised her enormous teary eyes to me. Could we please solve this? I'll do anything. I'll stop working, break up with Hannah, and attend therapy. Don't leave me for Emily, please, no matter what you want. When she chose to prepare a full hidden existence without me or our children, I recognized that she still didn't understand and continued to believe that this was about me and Emily, her and Marcus, or some other outside element. She was unable to recognize that she had fundamentally shattered our marriage. Tonight, I will remain at Emily's. I grabbed my keys because, to be honest, it hurts too much to look at you right now and I need time to think about how we're going to finish this. Not because anything was happening there. I left her sitting on the kitchen floor, heard her sobbing as I left, but I didn't turn around. Instead, I got into my truck and drove away. I stayed at Emily's for 3 days because I needed time to collect myself and decide what to do next. Additionally, before the big family gathering, Cousin Evelyn, the lawyer, wanted to make sure everything was in order. We set it up at Amelia's parents' house because we thought it would be neutral territory and felt it was time for everyone to know everything. They also have a right to know why the lives of their grandchildren were about to alter. Amelia attempted to avoid the situation by claiming she was too upset to handle it, and that she could either come willingly or I would have Evelyn initiate the divorce process without consulting her. When she arrived, it felt unreal to step in. In preparation for her family meetings, her mother had prepared coffee and set out the cookies she always makes. Like that wasn't the day their daughter's marriage fell apart, but just another Sunday visit. Evelyn brought copies of everything, including screenshots of Amelia's text conversations with Marcus, the Oak Valley application where she claimed to be single, and bank statements demonstrating that Amelia had been transferring funds to a different account. Everything was spread out on their dining room table, resembling a warped chronology of treachery. When Amelia's mother saw the rental application, she broke down in tears. After the Marcus situation came up, Amelia moved back in with their parents. Her dad sat there getting quieter and quieter as Evelyn went through everything. His girlfriend showed up at Amelia's workplace with printouts of all their texts. And the divorce was Fina Emily 2 months ago. I suppose I wasn't the only person looking at iPads. The entire office was able to observe. When Amelia listed Marcus as her emergency contact and attempted to explain why she intended to move into their apartment complex, HR became involved. Marcus and Amelia were both dismissed. Hannah also had her just desserts. It appears that I wasn't the only husband who had grown weary of her advice on contemporary relationships. It's funny in life. When Amelia proposed this LAT foolishness a year ago, I felt like my world was ending. I've done a fantastic job with my children now. Our sister took it all for granted, but I managed to find someone who had been there the entire time, watching me be a decent husband and father. Yes, I'm currently dating Emily. No, it wasn't planned by us. Yes, we are aware of how messy it is, but it was somewhat energizing to learn that I had feelings for someone who already loved my children and knew what family meant after watching Amelia want to ruin our family for a guy who had a girlfriend who didn't even want her. Occasionally, the garbage removes itself. You are aware of the adage regarding karma. It never forgets an address, but it is Hanahiant.